Muy buenas noches. La Cámara Peruana del Libro les da la bienvenida a la 22ª edición de la Feria Internacional del Libro de Lima. Antes de comenzar, les recordamos tomarse unos segundos para apagar sus celulares y disfrutar de nuestra siguiente actividad. En estos momentos nos encontramos en el auditorio Blanca Varela, Fundación BBVA Continental, para asistir al conversatorio El Periodista Deportivo. Nos acompaña en el podio Richard Ford, es narrador y periodista. Ha obtenido numerosos premios, entre ellos el Pulitzer, el FIL LIMA y el Princesa de Asturias de las Letras, que fue concedido en el 2016. Ha escrito las novelas Un trozo de mi corazón, La última oportunidad, Incendios y Canadá. También es autor de los libros de cuentos Rock Spring, de Mujeres con Hombres y Pecados sin cuento, además de ensayos y memorias. Sus lectores recuerdan con cariño a Frank Bascom, protagonista de las novelas El Periodista Deportivo, El Día de la Independencia y Acción de Gracias, y del libro de las novelas breves Francamente Frank. También nos acompaña en el podio Alonso Cueto, es narrador y periodista, ha obtenido el premio Herralde de la novela por la Hora Azul y el premio Anna Seger por el conjunto de su obra, entre otras distinciones. Es autor de El susurro de la mujer ballena, La pasajera y La segunda amante del rey. Varias de sus obras han sido adaptadas al cine. También nos acompaña Johann Page, es narrador, autor de los libros de cuentos Los puertos extraños y Todo termina esta noche. Obtuvo el premio Copé Bienal de Cuento por su relato Patrimonio. Este podio ha sido organizado por la Cámara Peruana del Libro con el auspicio de la Embajada de los Estados Unidos de América. Saludamos la presencia esta noche del señor Ryan Nichols, excelentísimo embajador de los Estados Unidos de América. Recibimos con fuertes aplausos a nuestros ilustres invitados.
Buenas noches. Buenas noches a todos, muchas gracias por acompañarnos en esta noche que será la última presentación de Richard Ford en Lima. Richard nos visita hoy en día, pero es un amigo nuestro desde hace mucho tiempo. Para todos los que hemos leído las novelas sobre Frank Bascom, un gran compañero de viaje, de lectura. Para los que hemos leído Incendios, originalmente Wildlife, Rock Springs, Un trozo de mi corazón y tantas otras obras que son parte de nuestra experiencia íntima de lectores. Es una gran alegría tenerlo con nosotros en presencia. Yo ya he tenido el privilegio, el placer de tener 2 conversaciones públicas con Richard. Así que esta noche vamos a dejar a Johann Page como conversador protagónico. Johann es un magnífico escritor joven, ¿no? Es autor de un gran libro, Todo termina esta noche, publicado por la editorial Peisa, donde hay pues una serie de relatos de primer nivel, entre ellos uno que a mí me gusta muchísimo, que es uno que se llama Patrimonio. Es también un gran lector de Richard Ford y vamos a escuchar cómo es que intercambian, ¿no? experiencias, comentarios en base a la obra de Richard desde la perspectiva de Johann Page. Muchísimas gracias. Adelante, Johann, podemos empezar.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias a todos por su presencia aquí. Le agradezco en principio a la Cámara Peruana del Libro por la invitación, por el privilegio de poder conversar con un autor como Richard Ford. Espero pues que la pasemos bien y que conversemos sobre algunos temas que he preparado para poder extraer un poco la médula de la esencia del trabajo de Richard Ford en esta última intervención aquí en la feria. Well, let's get started. Yes? Today we're going to talk about the sports writer, yeah? But also I would like to talk about the creative process. It will be okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I did it. I'll talk about it.
So you're right, you know how to
Well, I don't know about that.
Okay. About Frank Bascom, this character, this famous character of your work. You know, I've already know you have said it in a lot of interviews that you wrote this book, The Sport Writer, because your wife, Christina, told you that maybe you should write, you should try to write about a character that is happy with his life. So that decision changed a lot of things for you, isn't it?
Changed everything. Should always listen to your wife. Those of you who don't listen to your wife, you're making a terrible mistake.
That's a great lesson.
But, you know, I was a young writer who came from Mississippi, and for me, literature was about great dark forces, the forces of history, the forces of race, the forces of conflict, of war. And so for me, importance in writing was about dark subjects, was about people failing and people sometimes dying, and sexual darkness. And so I wrote 2 books pretty much based on those kinds of concerns. And I think they were good books. They're still in print, but nobody read them. And then what you want as a writer is for everybody to read your book. And so for me, importance meant dark subjects. And Christina did say to me, when I said to her, I said, I think I'm going to write a novel, but I don't quite know what to write it. This is in 1982. She said, well, she said what you said. She said, well, why don't you write about someone who's happy? And I thought, well, how do you do that? How do you make something happy be also dramatic and revealing and full of truth? Tolstoy said, happy families are all alike, but happy families, of course, are not all alike. Yeah. So I just had to figure out what to do. It's a challenge to a writer.
It's a difficult task to write something so different from your work.
You know, it's not so difficult, but it's uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
There's a difference between something being difficult and being uncomfortable. And along the way in your life, I was reading a quote from Oliver Cromwell the other day, and Cromwell said that if you're not getting better, you're not good. And that makes a lot of sense to me, and I realized what I had to do was get better. And in order to get better, I had to put myself into discomforting situations. Mostly I had to put myself into the situation in which I said to myself, I don't know what to do. And it's okay to put yourself into situations as a writer in which you don't know what to do, because the answer to that question is sometimes imaginative and unexpected.
But it's kind of a relief, I think, for your work, because the sports writer and this character, Frank Bascom, is indeed a happy person, or he seems to be happy, but I don't know. He says, for example, that in life, and I quote, in life there's nothing transcendental. It's a way to try to be happy, to convince himself to be happy, but I don't know. He says also that the past must get away. He needs to forgive.
Yes.
He needs to forgive. It's important for Frank Bascom to forgive, to forget all the past. Why?
Well, there are 2 questions embedded in that. The first about transcendental. I mean, I had a liberal arts education when I was in college, and the way we were taught literature is to mean this always means that. This may seem to be the subject, but the subject is really over here. You know, things signify, things mean. And I felt that in the process of understanding that transcendent understanding of life, that sometimes the very thing itself gets lost. Sometimes the subject itself, where you start, can be overlooked. And I thought that a better life, a successful life, and I'm not talking about books, I'm talking about life. Okay. The better life is the life in which you see the thing that is right in front of you, rather than using the thing that is right in front of you as a symbol for something else. So that was one thing. On the subject of history and the past, you know, I grew up in Mississippi. I grew up in an racially apartheid society, and it would be possible, as it was possible when I was growing up, to let that identify you, to say, I'm from Mississippi, I hold these beliefs. But if I didn't hold those beliefs, I didn't want my history to identify me. I wanted to be able to act in ways, to believe in ways, to be apparent to the world in ways which I myself authorized, rather than saying the past defines me, where I'm from defines me. So those are two things. And as subjects of literature, those are actually good subjects for literature to focus upon.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that the fight against the determination of the place, because sometimes the editors, the publishers, no, it tells you that you are a Southern writer, for example, and it's difficult to show them that you have more to say than just another Southern writer.
Well, when publishers tell you that, you know, okay, I'm from the South, I'm from Mississippi, but when publishers tell you that you're a Southern writer, what they're trying to do is develop a merchandising strategy.
They're trying to sell you.
They're trying to sell the book. They're trying to put you into a brand. I didn't want to be in that brand because I felt like there had been great writers from the South, Faulkner, Eudora Welty, Richard Wright, all kinds of wonderful writers from the South, but they had already done that work. And there really wasn't any air for me to breathe. There wasn't any subjects that I could be the master of if I stayed writing about the South. So Christina and I, at the time of this famous conversation that she and I had, we were living in New Jersey, where I didn't belong. So I had to try to make New Jersey be mine as a subject and as a place, and put the South behind me. And you know, Johann, that's one of those discomforting things. When you have to give up what you are born with, give up the accident of origin, and take on some other set of subjects which may not be native to you, that's uncomfortable. It's not difficult, but it's uncomfortable, but you must do it if you're going to get better.
But maybe in that discomfort process, Frank Bascom helped you to find another point of view. I think Frank Bascom, you've already said in other interviews, he's not an alter ego of you, because you have different lives. He had a son and he lost it. He got divorced, and you live in you haven't lived in New Jersey, huh? But in which way Frank Bascom helped you to understand another things? Do you think Frank Bascom, the writing Frank Bascom, all those years, his companion, has taught you something?
No, he didn't teach me anything. I taught him everything. I made him, he didn't make me. What I realized after Christina told me I needed to write about someone who was happy, what I realized was that in order to write about someone who was happy, I was going to have to bring more to the page than I had ever brought to the page. More of what I could imagine, more of what I knew, more of what I could remember, more of what I could observe. And in the process of trying to find a voice and a vessel, a character, for all of those things to take shape and to be interesting, Frank Bascom was the result of that effort. So it was a speaking voice, it was a vocabulary, it was a made-up history, it was a set of preoccupations. So that's what Frank Bascom emerged from. I mean, you could say in a slightly distorted way that he taught me things, but really and truly, you know, he didn't really teach me anything. I taught myself. You know, I'm the author.
You're the master.
I authorize everything. The characters don't take over my books and run with my books. I run with my books.
It's very interesting you say that, because you've already said that the characters of your books, they are not living forms. They're just fog of languages. Is it right? Is it fair to say that they are only products of language?
Well, that's the way I mean, I live in the world like we do, and so I see other human beings all the time, and I pay attention to them, and I know what human beings basically do and are and think, and I like them. But characters on the page are not little human beings. They are constructions, pieces of artifice made of language, which if I am skillful enough, or you are skillful enough, or we are skillful enough, can represent human beings in a plausible way. But they are never made of flesh and bone and skin and hair. They're always only made of language. And thank goodness they are, because it allows them to more easily surprise us. It allows me to use them to make you aware of things as a reader that you would not be aware of. I mean, you don't need to go to literature to find out what you can find out in the world by yourself. You need to go to literature to find out what you can only find out in literature, and the artifice of character permits that.
Okay. So, I would like to talk about the process of becoming a writer. For you, you've already said that you started to read in a serious way at 25 years old.
Younger, actually. I think I was about 19.
19.
19, yeah. But
with the
not
conscious.
But not before.
Oh, yeah. Okay. How did you turn into a writer? You can remember the time being when, the moment when you say, it's a vocation for me?
Well, that's one question which has 19 answers.
Give us a one.
The reason probably you're a writer and the reason that Alonzo's a writer is that we were readers and that we read books, and books made a difference to us. And there were things about books that we loved. We loved the language. We loved the transport. We loved the time that in our lives that it occupied. We loved the awareness that literature brought to us. And when you were a reader, as I became, then that was very enticing. And I thought to myself, gee, wouldn't it be nice if I could do something that created in another human being the effect that books created in me. But before I could reach that moment, I had to fail at many, many, many things. I failed in law school. I failed as a teacher. By failing, I mean I just didn't go forward with it. I didn't go forward in the Marine Corps. I didn't go forward in the CIA, who offered me a job in 1968. I was a sort of a guy who had a sense of patriotism when I was that age, and I have it now. But before all of those things could become attractive to me to imitate what I had read, I had to have a lot of things put behind me that I either couldn't do or didn't want to do. And so those things happened. I worked on the railroad. I taught school in Flint, Michigan. I just did all kinds of things which for one reason or another didn't work out.
Okay.
But there was a day in 1968 when Christina and I we were just about to get married, and she said to me, we were in the bedroom of my mother's apartment, we were getting ready to go out, and she said to me, she said, you know, we're going to get married in about 3 weeks. What do you think you're going to do? It's a reasonable question for a young wife-to-be to ask her young husband, who had failed at many things. And I said to her, I said, well, I think I'm going to try to be a writer. And I could just as easily have said that I was going to try to be a small engine repairman. But I said I'm going to try to be a writer because it was something I hadn't failed at already. And she said wonderfully, I'll never forget what she said. She said, oh, good, she said, that's great. She said, you be a writer and stay home and write books, and I'll get a job and earn a living because I really want to have a career.